Hi. In this video, we will look together at all the touchpoints between SharePoint and Microsoft Forms. You know that Forms is used for quizzes or surveys, but it is also widely used as a tool to generate forms for collecting data. In a company, it is very useful for gathering feedback or data from employees. Examples of using Forms include event registrations, preference surveys, and much more. Excuse me for a moment, I just wanted to quickly introduce myself, then I'll let you continue. I am one of the Microsoft MVPs and I am an expert in all the technologies revolving around Microsoft 365. So if you want updates on SharePoint, the world of intranet, perhaps on Teams or Microsoft Copilot, make sure to subscribe to this channel. We can use Forms, as you can see, on my computer to, in this case, register for an internal event or even for a simple expression of interest. I have built this form with two questions: the person's preferred time frame and whether or not they were interested in the workshop. In this case, it might have been better to put the interest first and then the time frame request. Obviously, this is a sample form and I wanted to use this form to clearly show you the integrations we can have between these two tools, so SharePoint Online for our intranet and Forms to create the form. First of all, you need to know that within SharePoint Online, if we go to edit the page, there is the possibility to use a web part called Microsoft Forms that allows us to insert a form created with Forms into a SharePoint page. Here, I can either create a new form or embed an existing form into the page. If I choose the option to add an existing form, I have the possibility to enter the form's address and choose whether to display the page that collects information from users or to display the results of a survey or quiz. In this case, I need to first set up the page. So let's go back into my conforms form. I click the button to retrieve responses from my colleagues. Here, I need to define the configurations I want to use in Forms to collect data from my colleagues. I can choose to have an open form so anyone who receives the link can respond, or I can choose to only allow responses from colleagues within my Microsoft 365 subscription. I can choose to save the name and then optionally decide that each person can fill out the form only once. And usually in corporate contexts, this is the configuration that is often used. I removed it in this case because I had to run multiple tests for the things I'm about to show you. Once this is done, I can copy the address of this form and insert it into the Toyin page. I click on OK and there you go. The form has been embedded into my page. If I click on publish, I can see the form on my page with the option to fill it out. Okay, and this is the first chucked away integration we have with Forms and SharePoint. Be honest, in the intranets we create for our clients, this integration is used less frequently because if we need to collect data from colleagues, we usually use components like the button or the call to action to ensure the form is selected within the intranet. So in this case, I use the call to action to say access the form, and I can also add a description if needed. In this case, I enter the title of my workshop. You can see that by republishing the page, the user experience is definitely much simpler. The user can click within the button on the SharePoint page and end up in Forms. And this is a second integration. I also wanted to show you that the web part we use to collect data from Forms, embedded within the SharePoint page, as I mentioned, also gives us the ability to create a page to view the results. However, you need to be a bit careful here because for this operation, Forms generates a page that can potentially be seen by anyone, even those who are not part of your company. Remember this because it is very important. Now, this second mode of this web part is often used to display the results of a survey to colleagues in the company, and these were the two types of integrations that can be done with the default tools between SharePoint and Forms. We have a third option, which is the ability to ensure that when someone fills out a form within Forms, like in my case, I now say that I am interested in the workshop and that I am interested in the lunchtime. The data submitted during the form completion ends up within the SharePoint site in a list that collects the preference data of my core colleagues. In this case, I name the list Workshop Registrations, and you can see that the two tests I did during this video have indeed ended up in this list, where I wanted to record the name of the person who filled out the form, whether they were interested or not, and the preference they specified. I was able to do this through a Power Automate like flow that was connected to the form, which has a trigger that starts when someone enters data into the form. It retrieves this data and then populates the SharePoint item with the person who filled out the form, a variable to determine if the user is interested in this workshop, in my case, and then the preference for the period, the time of day to hold this workshop. This, through Power Automate, is the method we use to integrate forms with SharePoint. Why do we use this method and place the data inside a list? Simply because this way I can make the experience of filling out the form even more personalized. I can not only save the data on SharePoint, but also perform any type of automation, send an email, generate a PDF file, and so on. So those were all the touch points between Forms and SharePoint Online. See you next time.